Aloha. Let me stand up. Aloha mai kako. Well, it's good to be here in Maui. What I want to do for you folks is kind of just to recapitulate what was presented, because that was a lot of information, a lot of terms, this and that. Let me just boil it down as to what actually is taking place. So, in this case of Lance Larsen versus the Hawaiian Kingdom, this is Lance alleging that the Hawaiian Kingdom government, okay, which is called the acting government, violated his rights by not protecting him when he went through a trial on the Big Island, which ended up him being incarcerated for 30 days, 7 days solitary confinement. Those two issues right there are what is called war crimes. Unfair trial and unlawful confinement. Comes under Article 147 of the Geneva Convention. Now, Lance was represented by an attorney, okay? And she was making these points. Now, she turned to the provisional government, which was created under what is called the doctrine of necessity, like a government in exile during occupations, saying that this government has neglected to protect her client, therefore they're liable. So that was the dispute between Larsen and the Hawaiian Kingdom. Now, to resolve that dispute, we made an arbitration agreement that took it to the Permanent Court of Arbitration. At the Permanent Court of Arbitration is where they verified, first, the Hawaiian Kingdom still exists, because they could not create a tribunal to resolve this dispute if the Hawaiian Kingdom didn't exist as a country. Because if the Hawaiian Kingdom was a part of the United States, the 50th state, they would have never taken this case, because that would be a violation of United States sovereignty. So they verified the Hawaiian Kingdom to be a state, and they also verified that the provisional government or the acting government is a legitimate government in representing the Hawaiian Kingdom as a state. They also had to verify that Lance Larsen was a Hawaiian subject of the Hawaiian Kingdom in a dispute with the Hawaiian government. So this dispute hits all the hallmarks of standing, legitimacy, and the ability to now have the tribunal be formed, to be created, to address this dispute. And the question was whether or not Lance Larsen can sue the acting government for not protecting him. Now, in these proceedings was a particular issue that came front and center, and that is called the indispensable third-party rule. So under international law, you have international courts. They don't have subpoena power. They cannot require countries to come into the court. They have to come in voluntarily. So if a tribunal is going to evaluate the conduct of a country like the United States that is not participating, if they're going to look at the conduct, in this case, what they did to Lance Larsen, they need them to be present. Now, this has nothing to do on whether or not the kingdom exists. This whole case was because the kingdom exists. The question was whether or not Lance Larsen can sue the acting government without the United States participating. That's what the issue was, okay? Well, what came out of this case was Lance Larsen could not proceed to sue the acting government. That's why it's called Larsen versus the Hawaiian Kingdom. We were the defendants in the case. We weren't the plaintiffs. We were being sued because of that indispensable third-party rule. But the tribunal stated in its award, in its judgment, that the indispensable third-party rule probably won't apply if you go to fact-finding. Now, fact-finding also comes under the Permanent Court of Arbitration. And since the court's creation, there have only been 5 commissions of inquiry. The first was 1905, I believe, and the last was in the 1960s. Only 5. But the fact-finding commission of inquiry under the Permanent Court of Arbitration, which the tribunal said could be pursued by the parties, deal with not only looking at facts, but also responsibility behind those facts. Liability. Liability. So the Permanent Court of Arbitration's fact-finding commissions of inquiry serve very similar to what we have come to know as grand juries. They look at the facts and they assign responsibility, and then the next step is to prosecute. But another court will prosecute. The Commission of Inquiry looks into the issue. That was given to us by the tribunal. Now we knew that when we finished, sorry, gotta make sure I'm sticking to my time. We knew when we finished the case back in the year 2000, well, 2001, we knew that the bigger issue was education, because what we experienced and participated at the international level was clear. Hawaii is a country. We're still a country. We're under occupation. The rules of law and rules of occupation apply, the rules of war. The problem is our people didn't know anything about this. So that's why it was decided that when we got back from the Netherlands, I would enter the University of Hawaii to get my master's degree specializing in international relations and public law and get a PhD. In the meantime, as that process of getting those degrees, I'm gonna start teaching. I'm gonna start revamping the history. We're not colonized, we're occupied. These are the laws of occupation, not the laws of the United States. That the United States failed to administer the laws of the Hawaiian Kingdom, which led to Lance Larsen's problem and why he got incarcerated. In fact, Lance Larsen, everybody's a Lance Larsen. Everybody has been violated their rights without even you folks even knowing it. Because Lance didn't know it either, but he had an attorney representing him. Now, as we began to educate and get people used to the terms such as war crimes, occupation. 10 years ago, if you said Hawaii's occupied, they think you're crazy. Today, you say Hawaii's occupied, people go, yeah, I know. Today, when you say war crimes, yeah, I can understand it. You say that 10 years ago, what are you talking about? That's all from education. And I had to ensure that the education was at the highest level, the university level. And then it goes down to the public schools. Because we educate teachers at the university. In fact, I'm part of a class that's going to be teaching at the College of Education. 5 Kamehameha school teachers that are coming through, and I'll be teaching them how to use my book, Ua Mauke'ea, which has been adopted as the new history book at the Kamehameha schools. What I want to show you, I want to read to you, is something profound that stems from education. Just this past 4th of July, in Boston, Massachusetts, the National Education Association passed a resolution accepting a proposal submitted by the Hawaii State Teachers Association, their representatives. And let me read to you from their website. Today, the National Education Association's Representative Assembly meeting in Boston approved new business item 37. That new business item states, the National Education Association will publish an article that documents the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy in 1893, the prolonged illegal occupation of the United States in the Hawaiian Kingdom, and the harmful effects that this occupation has had on the Hawaiian people and resources of the land. That's big. HSTA then states, mahalo to Chris Santomaro, a teacher at Kaneohe Elementary, who introduced the proposal, and Ululani Waialeale, a teacher at Kualapu'u Charter School on Molokai, whose impassioned and articulate argument in favor of the Hawaiian overthrow measure swayed a majority of teachers from across the country to support it. That's heavy. That's heavy. And that's not political. That's education. Because teachers are being taught. This is not a racial issue. This is not a cultural issue. This is history. Good, the bad, and the ugly. That's how it is. So it's forcing us to think in a different way. And I would like to say that I might have had a little part of this when we got back home to begin teaching at the highest level. People here are taking their kuleana. People are doing what they're supposed to do, which is important. In these proceedings, We are now moving toward forming the Fact-Finding Commission of Inquiry to look into war crimes that have been committed against Lance Larsen. We're also going to be having the commission look into war crimes that have been committed in Hawaii since 1893. In order to understand Lance Larsen's case, they need to understand the history of this occupation that put Lance Larsen in his position today, which again, Lance Larsen represents everyone here, irrespective of race, color, creed, or citizenship. Anybody in Hawaii is a Lance Larsen, and we're all waking up to this reality. We've been lied to. Okay? But we need the fact finders to look into this. Now, what the fact finders will do, and I shared this with Keoni, they are going to be looking into responsibility. This is not a political process. This fact-finding stems from the Larsen case. They may find that the acting government, based upon the facts and the responsibility stemming from those facts, may have not done everything they need to do to protect Larsen. We could be setting up ourselves to be sued by Lance Larsen. That's what this case is about. It's not about getting our people together. These guys are coming in as the hammer. I conveyed this to Alika Deshe. Very simple thing. Let's equate it to what's going on in America right now. Russian meddling, in the elections of 2016. Everybody says, yeah, there has been no meddling. No, and it goes back and forth, right? And then all of a sudden, once Mueller was appointed as special counsel, their job is to review facts, assign responsibility, and start moving toward indictments. Right after that was done, what was the first thing that the White House did? They started lawyering up. They started hiring attorneys to represent them, because now it has taken on another level. Once the Commission of Inquiry has been created, it's almost like similar to Mueller, special counsel, now going to start investigating. And we all have to look at all of ourselves and whether or not we have complied with the law, and whether or not ignorance is our protection or knowledge is our detriment. So this affects everyone, and that's why it's important, so important, that it's not people we need to go after, but we need to look at ourselves. Am I following the rules? Do I know what I'm talking about? And sometimes, or most of the times, I would highly recommend, when in doubt, don't say anything. Because whatever you say can and will be used against you. And this Fact-Finding Commission of Inquiry, we're now moving to have the sitting here in Hawaii. They're going to be having the hearings in Hawaii. We've already secured a place for them. Back in the Larsen case, we were entertaining bringing a tribunal back in the year 2000 to have the hearings in Hawaii. We knew it wasn't time. Our people weren't ready. They weren't educated. They weren't aware. Now it's different. We're going to have them. And we're also moving toward reconstituting the original tribunal to be the fact finders, because they said they would. And currently, 2 of those former arbitrators are now sitting judges on the International Court of Justice. This is big. This is not a game. This is for real. And I'm very careful how I walk this process, because I could incriminate myself if I try to manipulate or change. My job is to represent and protect the Hawaiian Kingdom, the government. Larsen's attorney, his job is to protect Lance Larsen. And that's going to be part of the proceedings. So I want to commend Maui and all the different islands, and especially Walter, who is driving this move toward awareness. Because people need to be made aware. Not saying you have to do anything. Just be aware. Start to talk. Start to share. That's what's important. Mahalo.
Mahalo. We'll go ahead and get through all the panelists first. Yeah.
Okay, so Walter just said, Keanu, you got my 5 minutes.
Oh. I think you took it already.
I kind of went over, yeah, exactly. So let me now defer to Keoni, because I actually took Walter's 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Sai.
Aloha, Maui. I'm Keoni Agard. I'm an attorney practicing law for the last 37 years, graduate of University of Hawaii Law School. When I was in law school, in my first year, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my career, and a family came to see me about land that was stolen from them. And I didn't have any background yet in real estate law. So I told them, listen, you better go see an attorney that has experience in this area. And they were saying, well, how can we do that? And they had looked up in the directory, and they were trying to find an attorney to hire to assist them in recovering their property, which was being stolen, by the way, by a church, adverse possession. So it was a sad situation. Anyway, one thing led to another, and I got into real estate law, quiet title actions on behalf of Native Hawaiians. So back in the 1990s, early 1990s, I was in this lawsuit, and the attorney was started asking me questions about a certain case that I was involved in. One thing led to another, and a strange series of events occurred, and I was called in a subsequent case. I had been certified as a land title expert. So I went to the trial. I was qualified as a land title expert, and we fortunately won that land case, and the property was retained by the Native Hawaiian family. Am I talking loud enough? You can hear me? Okay. So I saw Keanu, and we had a discussion, and what happened was he gave me a call and asked me if I might be interested in being involved in a case that he was going to bring before the Hague, the Larsen versus Hawaiian Kingdom case. So one thing led to another. I checked things out. I said, okay, sure. So I was the appointing authority in the Larsen versus Hawaiian Kingdom case at The Hague. Keanu asked me to take a look at the qualifications of some of the potential judges that might be hired or selected to do the trial at the Permanent Court of Arbitration. So I took a look at the qualifications. We selected two individuals. One was Christopher Greenwood. Christopher was from Australia, and the other person we selected was Gavin Griffin. He was also from Australia. And the two of them then selected a third judge or arbitrator, and his name was James Crawford. All three of these individuals were very well qualified in terms of their knowledge and expertise in international law. So we were confident that they would provide a fair hearing on the facts. So as Keanu just stated, the case now has grown to what it is, and we find ourselves moving on to a fact-finding commission of inquiry. And Keanu didn't tell you a lot of what actually is going on behind the scenes, but it's a significant case from the standpoint that the facts and circumstances are determined by the tribunal, and the perpetrators are identified, and then they're held accountable for potential human rights violations. In this case, war crimes. And when you hear that term, war crimes, there's certain ideas that are conjured up in your mind, but there's a definition which qualifies what that means, war crimes. I'm here to tell you that it's extremely serious. The potential liability of those that are charged with war crimes and convicted is very difficult to fathom, because there's literally potentially thousands of individuals that might be charged with these war crimes. But in any event, we'll have to wait and see. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of what the judges decide in this fact-finding mission. But I got to give credit to Keanu and his team that are up at the international arena. It's extremely important that we support any effort and all efforts in the international arena. The rest of the world is watching, and what you get is exposure at that level. And exposure means the true history of Hawaii will be revealed. And the more times we get out there, the more times that story is told, the more political allies we will gain. And in the end, of course, what we're all looking for is justice. And we want to see the right thing happen during our lifetimes. So I can't emphasize the fact more that we need to be working together as fellow Hawaiians to make certain that we find ways to work together. In the past, maybe, that we had some difficulty there. Sometimes our own people are pulling at us, and it's not good. So I'm optimistic, however, that there is a way, we need to find a way to work together and to support each other whenever we're before the international arena. And, along with presenting the information that Keanu will be doing in the international arena, I think we need to join in prayer, because these are serious times, and there's many odds against us in terms of the over 120 years of propaganda that has been going around and misled many people. So we need to set the record straight. We need understanding from the other countries throughout the world, and hopefully with the perseverance of all of us in this room and the support that we give each other, we can put together a substantial argument to persuade the world that a wrong was committed and we need to make it right. Mahalo.
Beautiful. So, Uncle Walter, you got 3 more minutes added on from that last one. He only took about 7. So there you go.
I got my 5 minutes back. Thank you. Okay, I did a lot of talking earlier, and we're talking about going to the international level, but that doesn't mean that we're going to forget all of the battles that we have at the national level. This is not either or. We're going to have to do battle at both levels in order for us to survive, because our resources are under constant attack. Our water, our land, our air, everything is under constant attack. So we have now 2 big kuleana that we have to implement. So I want to tell you a story. I was at an OHA meeting, and Oz Stender, who was a trustee back then, he stood up and the cameras was rolling, and he said, yes, there was an overthrow. Yes, there was no annexation. But so what? And I almost fell over in my chair. And what he was meaning was that we don't have the aircraft carriers. Might makes right. And that's the kind of thing my generation was brought up to believe, that you cannot defeat the United States of America. So you have to beat them at their own game. Go get educated at Kamehameha schools and join and defeat them at their own game. So that attitude represents my generation, that America is too powerful for us to do anything. So get a grip and go make sure that your family is provided for. So in working with this younger generation, and I don't know if, Ken, are you the younger generation or in between the younger generation? I consider you right about that. So this generation, when they say, so what? it's not a defeative so what. It's like, we're going to go to the international level. So what? You know, I mean, it's a positive so what. So we need to try and convince not only the international guys, we need to convince those people that are in control of our resources, our Hawaiian resources. We need to make sure that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs that belongs to us, the Hawaiian people, represent us. We cannot have the old farts up there saying, so what? Get a grip. We need to have them. They do not support this effort to go to the international level. They support federal recognition. They want us to be even more connected to America. So we have to fight not only at an international level, but we need to be active in pursuing and taking care of the resources that we have in our hand right now. So we need to really put some pressure on these trustees to do what they're supposed to be doing in this battle at the international level. So the last thing I wanted to leave with you is that today you have received information that most of our people out there do not have. And we're trying to go to every island to give out this information. So now that you have this mana'o, your kuleana now is to spread this information, to go out there and start talking about unity, start talking about not only national battles in saving our sand and our aina and our water. Those things are important. We're going to continue to do those things, but add on this information about another solution that we have as Hawaiians, and to spread this information out there. So somebody can have my 6 minutes that I have left. So I really want to say mahalo to all of you with the last minutes that I have for coming out tonight, and take this information and spread it to your family and spread it to your friends. Aloha.
Mahalo. We do have about 3 more minutes if anybody wants to add anything else. Of course, huh?
Of course. Bring more clarity to this thing. In my experience, when people say they get it, they don't. Because it is complex, and it's okay for you not to get it. That's what I want to say. But I just want to let you know that the proceedings have started, and they will continue to start, to continue to move, and it'll take on its own course. We need to address our history, not the future. When you tell a Hawaiian, look to the future, the word for future is kawama hope, which is a time of the past. So literally, when you tell the Hawaiian, look to the future, he turns to the past. In that past is the mo'olelo. You learn from the successes, you capitalize on the successes, you learn from the mistakes. And then you get ike. Now you see something you didn't see before. Within that ike, or that vision, you have kuleana. And everyone will know what the kuleana is, but you wouldn't know your kuleana if you don't know your history. The practical value of history is that it's a film of the past, run through the projector of today onto the screen of tomorrow. That film never changes, but your projector today has to get updated to process that film, no matter how uncomfortable it gets. And once you can process that film, you now see something you didn't see before. Everything that I do, I talk about the past, because when you know the past, you know the future. You know where this thing is moving. The Fact-Finding Commission of Inquiry is just a part of this process. It's part of the film, it's part of the projection. We need to understand that. And I would not be getting involved with anything that would upheave our community. My job is to make sure that no economic chaos ensues. My job is to show or to make sure that no political chaos ensues. You have to follow rules. And these rules I'm very comfortable with because I'm very ma'a to it. And it does provide a process for resolution, which is the key. I would not be here promoting something that will put any of our people in danger. That's irresponsible. Because I live here too. And I got family here. This gets into the political economy, it gets into economics, it gets into trade, it gets into education. There's so many facets of this. This is not just international law, but international law is the means by which to resolve this problem. And just as people in America were just as ignorant as I was back in 1994 when I woke up, I cannot treat other people who don't know this like they should have known this. But now, you cannot claim ignorance because now we teach it in the schools. Now we teach it at the universities. And now the community is teaching it amongst each other. And that's what's important. Education is key. And Commandment the Third said, my kingdom is the kingdom of the Palapala. That's education. That is so important now. Education. Not throwing the rocks at people. Education, and then when you know you're educated, you go, hey, gee, I don't need to throw the rock. Actually, I get them. A lot of frustration comes out of not knowing. Ignorance. When I end with this, Olelo no Eao, and then I guess we'll take questions. And I share this with my students at UH. This proverb refers to the kahui vai, the water gourd. Okay, the water gourd look like when ipu with a long neck, yeah, the canteen. So the way this Olelo no Eao goes with the kahui vai, the water, okay, in the gourd represents knowledge. And the gourd, the kahui vai, represents the person. The gourd with a little bit of water makes the most noise when you shake it. Mahalo.
All right. We'll get into some questions. If you do have questions, go ahead and write them down. Go walk over. One of the members of the Royal Order will come and collect them, and they'll hand them up to me. Okay, so our first question, they're not directed to anybody specific, so anybody is free to answer. What happens to Hawaii after we have successfully appealed on the international level? It's kind of a three-part question. Are we striving for independence, or are we striving to reinstate the Hawaiian kingdom?
Okay, I got to take that one. Terminology is so important. Terminology. So in that question, you have certain terms that we've been using in the past that wouldn't apply now. One of the terms is independence. So when we get our independence, right? Because that term stemmed from the sovereignty movement, where every group has a way by which to become their own nation. That's why it's called a sovereignty movement or independence movement, moving towards something. Independence, by definition, means your laws over your country exist independent of other laws. So when you're called an independent state, that means only your laws exist over your territory. That's why independence is synonymous with sovereignty, supreme authority. The Hawaiian Kingdom already achieved the recognition of its independence in 1843. That's why in the kingdom we have a national holiday called La Kuokoa, November 28th, called Independence Day. So we are independent, and our laws apply over our territory. Now, the only thing that can affect our laws is if we were annexed to the United States, then our laws would be replaced by US laws and their independence. But we don't have a treaty. We're not part of the United States, so we're still independent. Does that make sense? So we cannot say when we get our independence. No, we are independent. Now, what does independent mean? What does that mean with regard to the Larsen case? The main provision of the law of occupation is Article 43 of the Hague Convention, which says the occupier, when they're in the territory of another state and occupying it, they must administer the laws of the occupied state. What they're saying is you must administer that country's independence. Until the occupation ends and the occupier leaves, then the occupied government will continue to be the government of that country. So independence, we already have. So we don't have to speak to that. We don't have to get it again. Okay. We have it. So we're not into restoring the Hawaiian Kingdom through these international proceedings. We're exposing the Hawaiian Kingdom still exists because of these international proceedings, and that the United States has not complied with the law of occupation since 1893 till today, which has culminated in the violations of Lance Larsen's rights. That's a very different narrative, right? So we're here to ensure accountability for the non-compliance of not following the laws of occupation. This is the consequence of not following. We're not trying to become a country again. So when Federico Lenzerini, the professor, was saying, when asked, what can Hawaiian subjects do? Believe. Believe the country still exists. Because it does legally, but to be legally existing does not mean you believe it. Because you might believe something else depending on what you were taught. That's why education is important. So to answer that question, the proceedings are means of accountability, not recreating the nation again. The nation never left. We fell asleep. Quick analogy, Hawaiian Airlines flying in the sky, Hawaiian Kingdom. The only thing that happened to the Hawaiian Airlines flying in the sky was taking out the pilot, the queen and her cabinet. Releasing sleeping gas into the cabin, everybody fell asleep, and they painted the airlines red, white, and blue and now called it American Airlines. After 100 years, the paint is chipping. We're seeing it's not American Airlines, it's a different jet, and everybody's waking up in the cabin because we're now releasing good oxygen called education. That's all we're doing. But we're not in the pilot's position, and we don't want to scare that pilot who is the governor's office and do a nosedive economically. So it's like, brother, just keep driving, but guess what? We're bringing in an international commission of inquiry. They're now watching you, and you're going to be held accountable. And that's what this process is. It's really a process of accountability, not recreating anything.
So a lot of these questions are getting answered, while they're talking, and a lot of them coming in are practically the same. So I'm trying to organize them so as to ask one question rather than ask the same question 5 times. Yeah. So next question, it's an interesting one. Who is orchestrating the current organization of the Hawaiian Kingdom? Who is in charge?
Okay. This event of fact-finding and legal proceedings are very complex. I'm not trying to simplify it more than I can, but I'm trying. Terminology, because reference to the Hawaiian Kingdom. Who's running it? The Hawaiian Kingdom is a country, like the United States of America is a country. You separate the country, which in law we call the state. That's the sovereign state. You separate the state from the government, because a government can be overthrown without overthrowing the country. So in the case of Iraq in 2003, it was the Iraqi government under Saddam Hussein that was overthrown. It wasn't Iraq, the country. It was still a country. And the laws of occupation mandated the United States to administer Iraqi law without the Iraqi government. Okay? What happened in 1893 was an illegal overthrow of our government, not our country. The Hawaiian Kingdom is the country. It was the government that was overthrown, and the government overthrown is still a misnomer because it really wasn't overthrown. It was seized. That entire governmental infrastructure of the Hawaiian Kingdom in 1893, executive, legislative, and judicial branches, the only change that took place or overthrow was the Queen and her cabinet. The Queen, 4 ministers, and Marshal Charles Wilson from the police. Replaced by insurgents calling themselves the Executive and Advisory Council, and then everybody in government, the existing government, the infrastructure, were forced to sign oaths of allegiance to this new regime. That defiance of signing that oath is the song Kaulana Napua, or Mele Alohaina, the Patriot song. That's what that song is all about. The Royal Hawaiian Band, as a government agency, refused to sign it, and they got fired. All that happened in 1893 was a change of allegiance. That governmental infrastructure, that Hawaiian Airlines, it's actually the Hawaiian Kingdom. Did you know all the public schools in Hawaii are from 1840s? The circuit courts, the district courts, the Supreme Court, they're all from the Kingdom era, 1840s. The police department, the fire department. Did you know majority of the private schools in Hawaii are all from the Kingdom era? Midpac Institute is actually Kauai Seminary. Kamehameha Schools, 1887. Iolani, 1870s. St. Andrew's Priory. St. Louis High School, 1846. In fact, Kamehameha Schools is one of the youngest schools. You know, so when you think about it, actually, we're realizing this is all ours. It's just we're led to believe it wasn't. So the terminology again. So when you say who's leading the Hawaiian Kingdom, are you talking about the country or are you talking about a government? Well, the country exists despite the government being overthrown, but who's driving this with regard to the Lance Larsen case? And that is called the provisional government or the acting government, which I represent, which is in these proceedings. If we weren't a real legitimate acting government, we would not have had the case at the Permanent Court of Arbitration to begin with, because they had to look into doing their due diligence to determine whether or not we are who we say we are. And you just don't say it, you got to back it up. And it's a legal issue, it's necessity, it's how a private can become a lieutenant in time of war. He's just the acting lieutenant until a properly commissioned officer comes, he goes back down being a private. A lot of that comes from my military training. I'm a retired captain, but it also is infused and solidified by my political science training and how it can take place. So the acting government during occupation cannot represent the people of Hawaii because they didn't get elected by the people. And you cannot have elections during occupation. You can't. Give you an example. When you vote, first of all, who registers voters? Do private people register voters for the state of Hawaii? No, the elections off. The governor does that, right? Who creates the voting polls? The executive branch. Who calls into session the legislature? The governor. So you need a government to have an election. Well, for this case of occupation, then how can you create a government without being elected? Well, you can't have elections during occupation. That's why you can only have it under what is called necessity, very similar to how governments were created during World War II, governments in exile. So when Belgium was invaded by the Germans and citizens fled, went to London, they formed a provisional government representing Belgium, not the people. And their job was to look out for the interests of the Belgian state and those laws that protect the people. And that's where the laws of occupation apply. So that issue of running the provisional government representing the Hawaiian Kingdom in these proceedings are very much grounded in legal proceedings, because when I say if we did it wrong, we committed high treason. And we can be held accountable after this whole thing finishes. When you deal with law, you have to be careful you know what you're doing, because it could bite you. And that's why everything has to be done step by step. So I just want to say, I'm not here to defend the acting government. I'm just explaining we're in international proceedings through the Permanent Court of Arbitration, and we're now in fact-finding. Our job is to protect the state, which then protects the people. That's why Lance Larsen was alleging we were not protecting him. What did we do? Well, we did a lot of things, but that's going to be up to the fact-finding commission of inquiry. And if that fact-finding commission of inquiry says that was not enough, then we can be held liable to Lance Larsen, and we can be sued. So that's where these issues are. But it does provide a foundation for everyone here to actually see that this is actually happening. It's not a proposal. I'm not trying to argue with you that this could be. I'm explaining to you what happened and where we are now. And the key is education. Education is so important, but critical questions are also just as important. Critical questions, not argumentative stuff, not trying to throw rhetoric out, beyond that. Let's get into the meat and get into the issue of what really is going on, right? And that's what I kind of want to just share, because I'm not here to defend it. I'm not here to defend Lance Larsen or anything. I'm here to explain what's happening. And everybody has a place in these proceedings. Because remember, like I said, everyone, including myself, is a Lance Larsen. We all went through our own problems. But there's a way to address it and a way to fix it.
So just to get it out of the way, what year was the Lance Larsen case filed?
So the provisional government was established on December 15th, 1995. The case with Lance Larsen alleging the Hawaiian government's negligence for not protecting him was 1999, when the case was filed at the Permanent Court of Arbitration, November of 1999. From November 1999 until March of 2000, the Permanent Court of Arbitration was vetting this. They were looking into the status on whether or not the Hawaiian Kingdom as the country still exists as a state, and then vetting whether or not the Hawaiian government can represent the Hawaiian Kingdom and whether or not Lance Larsen is a Hawaiian subject. And by April, that's when Keoni got involved as the appointing authority, and within 4 weeks, within 1 month, the arbitral tribunal was formed. And then the procedural order that came out after pleadings were submitted was in July. And then oral hearings were held in December of 2000. And then the case came to an end on February 5th, 2001, where they opened the door to fact-finding. It could go further, but it's up to the parties to make an agreement to go to fact-finding. But we chose, let's forego the agreement right now. We need to begin re-education. And that's what started the work at the university level, to begin to share and do some critical research and engage some very, very uncomfortable topics. And that the HSTA, for what it accomplished at that National Education Association, is awesome. These are teachers from across America that agreed to that. Now that, I congratulate the HSTA representatives, especially its treasurer and secretary, Amy Peruso, who's a history teacher at Mililani High School, who has been teaching about Hawaii's illegal occupation and the illegal overthrow since 2006. We met when we were all in the master's program in political science. And then because of that, she also was runner-up Teacher of the Year at the National Education Association. What they accomplished this on July 4th, just a few weeks ago, it just didn't happen overnight. Our teachers, our family, our friends who are teaching in the schools, high school, elementary, intermediate, they have already started to teach it. And that's important because we have to ensure that our information and history is institutional, not political. Because our children will be learning this and they won't have to go through what we're going through now, which is a mind-bending experience and gets everybody upset. You got now children that are coming up, they know Hawaii's occupation. What are they going to do to contribute to the country? Not everybody can pull tarot. Where's the lawyers? Where's the police? Because we got to think this is country, not tribal. And the issue there, as one more point, who are Hawaiians? The term Hawaiian is short for Hawaiian subject, which is a citizenship, not ethnicity. You can be Chinese and be Hawaiian, just like you can be Chinese and be American. So it's the citizenship. So we have to go back again to the terminology. Hawaiian could be Haole, could be Chinese, could be Samoan. And you had people in the Kingdom era that were not Aboriginal or Native, but they were Hawaiian. Sanford Dole, Lauren Thurston, they were not American. They were Hawaiian subjects, and they committed high treason, and they will be held accountable. Not their family, not their children, but them. But they weren't American, even though they were Caucasian. They were Hawaiian subjects. So these things are all part of what we're teaching at the University of Hawaii. It's like we've been playing football using baseball rules. All we're doing is we're still playing the game, but now we got the right rules. Now we can apply it in a way that, hey, I think we can win. And that's what this process of education is really, really all about.
Now, we only got time for maybe 2 more questions or so. So there's a lot of questions over here about war crimes. So I'm going to combine them together because they're pretty much the same. This one, though, is it considered a war crime to use the American law to fight for land and resource issues?
You guys got to ask some questions for, Walter and Keoni. So the question was, is it a war crime to use American law in protecting resources here? Is that the gist of the question? Okay. Very good question. It's a very good question. Okay, first of all, what is a war crime? Because when you first mention war crime, you see blood, right? You think about Auschwitz, mass killings of Jews, right? That's what people think about war crimes. The definition of a war crime is a violation of the laws and rules of war. That's all it is, okay? Killing is actually part of war, right? But killing a civilian or a prisoner is a war crime because that's a non-combatant, right? So war crimes in occupied territories apply to the rules during an occupation. The first rule of occupation is Article 43 of the Hague Convention. Remember the term independence. Independence refers to the laws of the occupied state. Article 43 mandates the occupier to administer the laws of the occupied state. They are not supposed to be bringing in their laws because their laws are limited to their territory. You can only administer the laws of the occupied state, not their laws. To bring in their laws is a direct violation of Article 43. It's called omission of administering the laws of the occupied state. That violation right there that took place in 1893 is a war crime. It's a violation of the rule. Today we are operating under rules that are American, which is an extension of a war crime. We're using American laws, Hawaii revised statutes, ordinances, Supreme Court decisions. Those are all American laws. So to use American laws in an occupied territory to protect Hawaiian resources becomes very questionable now. It could be a war crime because that is being complicit and promoting and maintaining the illegality, which is directly tied to Lance Larsen's trial, which was American law that ended up putting him in prison when he was saying these laws are illegal. But whenever you talk about a crime, there is a big difference between committing a crime and not knowing that you're committing a crime. One of the elements of committing a crime is a term called mens rea. It's called knowledge. You have to have known, right, that this is not right or legal. And then your actions taken from that point could involve criminal liability. But if you didn't know, had no clue, that's not a crime. That may be a civil right violation, that might be you might be subject to a fine, but it's not a crime. You know what the catch-22 is on education and knowledge? You cannot say you didn't know. You cannot say you didn't know. So when HSTA just came out with this accepted proposal to document, not investigate, to document the illegal occupation by the United States, what you've just done there is they kind of claim they didn't know. Now the key here is, how do you protect Hawaiian resources in light of this situation, this illegality? That's precisely what's going to be taken up by the International Commission of Inquiry. They're going to be addressing those issues and provide recommendations because we need to know. Because remember, we're not here to create, I'm not here to create chaos. I'm not here to create upheaval. I'm here to fix the problem. This is ho'oponopono at the highest level. Yeah, this is not ho'opunipuni at the highest level. So the International Commission of Inquiry is an important part of this bigger process of education and people now realizing I have rights. Where do I go to protect them? Who protects them? That's what this whole issue is all about. Yeah. Okay.
Hello. See if we can squeeze in maybe two more. This one right here says, how do I challenge or take on the task of the wordings on state and county forms to check box for, are you a U.S. citizen?
Okay. Nationality. First of all, before what you, because you got to be truthful, right? You know, I believe in telling the truth. So if somebody asks me something, answer it. But before you can answer it, you got to understand it. See, in Hawaii, we really don't understand nationality. I remember somebody used to tell me, hey, Keanu, what's your nationality? Oh, Hawaiian, Chinese, Caucasian. What's your ethnicity? Oh, same thing, Hawaiian, Chinese, Caucasian. I always wondered why they had the two on the application forms at Dole Cannery. It wasn't until I joined the Army and the sergeant said, nationality, you mark American. Oh, that's what nationality is. I never know that. All of us using the word wrong back home. Citizenship. Citizenship under Hawaiian Kingdom law slightly was adjusted under the laws of occupation. So citizenship under Hawaiian Kingdom law, let's go back to January 1893, January 1st, 1893. You could acquire Hawaiian citizenship one of three ways. Born on the soil, called natural born. That's how Sanford Dole became a Hawaiian subject. He was born in Honolulu. His parents were American. Second, you can be naturalized. You got to live in the country, I think it was 5 years residency. Then you can apply for naturalization and get granted citizenship. The third way is traveling abroad, and let's say two Hawaiian parents, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Kealoha travel to California in 1893, give birth to a child. That child in Los Angeles, born in Los Angeles, is an American citizen by birth, natural born, but a Hawaiian subject by parentage. That's a dual citizen. So whoever was born in Hawaii in 1893, January 16th, is a Hawaiian subject, irrespective of your ethnicity or former nationality. Now the laws of occupation will kick in once occupation begins. And the laws of occupation prevent people in an occupied territory from acquiring citizenship through birth on the soil or naturalization. You can't get it through naturalization because the government's not there, so you can't apply, right? And they prevent it from getting it from being born on the territory, because if that was the case, then the occupier can flood the territory with its own citizens, give birth children there, and basically throw off the status quo of the national population of the occupied state. So the only way that you can acquire citizenship during occupation is through parents. So for me, I am not a Hawaiian subject because I was born at Kapiolani Hospital in Honolulu. I'm a Hawaiian subject because I descend from Hawaiian subjects in 1893. That's why. Now, let's give you an example. Anybody who can directly trace their direct genealogy to someone who was a Hawaiian subject before January 16, 1893, whether Japanese, Chinese, Caucasian, are Hawaiian subjects. But you may have somebody in your family who's American. You're also American. So for me, my great-grandfather, after 1893, migrated to Hawaii. His name was Charles Reeves, R-E-E-V-E-S, from Sparta, Tennessee. Married my great-grandmother, a native, and that's where we get my grandfather, Henry Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves? And that's where you get me, Keanu Sai, because my dad married a Reeves. So Keanu Reeves, the movie actor, is my second cousin. We all stem from Charles Reeves from Tennessee. So when somebody asks me, what's my nationality? I can say Hawaiian subject and American citizen, because parentage, right? That's how it works. But where you live is the laws that you abide by. So even though I'm an American citizen from my great-grandfather and a Hawaiian subject from my great-grandmother as well, I'm still in Hawaii. And I gotta follow Hawaiian law because, remember that term, independence? The laws still apply. That's how it works. So people need to start to do their genealogies that take it back to 1893, irrespective of your race, color, creed. And even if you're not a Hawaiian subject, and you're just an American citizen or a Japanese citizen or whatever the case may be, remember you're still in the country called the Hawaiian Kingdom that is occupied, and you gotta follow Hawaiian Kingdom law. Just as if I'm in America, I gotta follow American law. If I'm in France, I follow French law. When you're in Hawaii, you understand you gotta follow Hawaiian law. Lance Larsen tried to, and that's why he got locked up and went through an unfair trial, which led to these proceedings. Lance woke up and he got hit. He's a victim. And his rights are now being addressed. Who's responsible for the violation of his rights? So Lance, his story, I'm gonna say again, is all of our story. Should have on hashtag, I'm Lance Larsen.
Well, that's all the time we have for the questions area. But what I did is I gave them the questions. We're going to do closing remarks now, just in case they wanted to comment on anything that we haven't asked yet. So go ahead.
There's this question which says, do you think that we should give up or say stop? The answer to that is that we should never give up, ever, as long as we're alive. Because we know that history is on our side, and we need to persevere. We need to stay focused. We need to continue to object and fight for what's right. This next question is, what type of terms and language do we use when our kupuna land is pulled into a quiet title action? Who asked this question? Let me sit down with you right after, and I'll give you a full-on explanation to answer your question. Because this will take a while.
Closing remarks? Yeah.
In closing, somebody asked me, why did you go and spend all this time organizing events with music, food, and all that kind of stuff on every single island? And one of them was because it's Laho'ehoi Ea. But the real reason that I went around and spent so much time and energy was because what you guys are hearing tonight, I've heard it about 10 times already. And if you go away with anything else, go away with the fact that whoever is leading us into this international level is Akamai. I cannot find anybody that I would pick to lead me and my future generations into this level. So when I started to understand what he was saying and who he was and how much knowledge he has, I decided to put all my time and energy to help educate everybody so we can understand that we have somebody that we can put our trust in, that he has the knowledge and the heart and the na'au to do this job. So I wanted to say publicly, mahalo for Keanu Sai for putting his whole life into what he's doing right now for us.
Mahalo nui. And I really want to acknowledge Walter, because Walter and I used to talk. And Walter's a good hunter, on Molokai. I went hunting one time and I missed. Keanu, I get him. And he shot him. I was in the army. I never zeroed the weapon. Okay, my fault. I was giving you one excuse. Kentucky windage, nana. But Walter has gone through a lot with Kaho'olawe. That is a part of our history that is profound, and he engaged the U.S. Navy. And all he told me, was he felt this was right. He didn't have the understanding of what I know, well, what we know today. But for Walter to have done that with George Helm, Mitchell, with all of them, that is a part of our history that nobody can deny. And that I respect Walter a lot, and I really appreciate how you extended that to me and thanking me for sharing, because that means a lot, And I just want to say mahalo.
I also have to say that in my experiences with Keanu in the last 30 years has been a good one in terms of providing more education, more understanding, better understanding amongst those in our Hawaiian community who were either uninformed or misinformed. So, as he said earlier, education is indeed the key. It's most important that we educate our communities. And the more we do that, the more effort we put into that, the closer we'll be in terms of achieving our joint goals. So I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and mahalo.
Mahalo to our panelists. Mahalo, thank you guys for organizing this. Mahalo, Uncle Walter. Mahalo to the Royal Order of Kamehameha, the Kahikili chapter. Again, mahalo to the college, Maui College here, and Event Horizons. Yeah, audiovisual guys, mahalo you guys. Thank you all for coming tonight to listen to this, amazing speeches and presentation. And Kaulike Peskaya, beautiful voice, young man, yeah, 17 years old, jeez. So again, my name is Kui Gapero, was the guy talking up here all day. Anyway, mahalo Kainoa for helping organize this event too.
Right on, Kainoa.
Any last words? Last words, not last words, but. All right, folks, thank you for coming tonight. We can stand up, we'll go make a circle, do Hawaii Aloha.